Welcome to another episode of BrainScratch. I'm John Lorden, and today we are looking into an update on a case that we covered previously and a new case. And there's some things that are similar between the two. We have two families that believe they should be seeking justice, but some of the authorities aren't necessarily agreeing with them in one case, and in the other case, it seems like the authorities just aren't doing a whole lot to help. Let's see if we can help by sharing this information and hopefully raising some tips. But let's go ahead and start with the case update first. That is on the case of Nora Quoirin. You might remember this is a family that went on vacation in Malaysia, and their teen daughter disappears the first night that they're there. Unfortunately, they find her body several days later. Now, we originally covered this case back in November. There is an inquest that was launched, and there was a lot of information that was coming out. I anticipated that we would get some more significant information because we had only got through about half of the inquest at the time of that video. I've kept an eye on it, and there really hasn't been much other strong developments in this case. But there has been a conclusion to the inquest. So let's start here at theguardian.com. The family of Nora Ann Quoirin, the London schoolgirl found dead during a holiday in a Malaysian jungle, have said they are utterly disappointed after a coroner ruled that no third party was involved, and she probably died as a result of misadventure. When I originally looked into this, I remember this feeling of just being utterly conflicted because I understood the points that the family were raising, but I also understood the points of what law enforcement was saying. They really didn't find strong evidence of any type of abduction or break-in, no ransom demands, so I kind of understood where they were at. But then the family was raising some interesting points as well. I mean, first of all, of course, they would know Nora a lot better than law enforcement. They would know what to expect out of her in terms of how she acts. So right off the bat, of course, they're going to have more insight. But along that, there was some technical problems that I was interested in as well. You've got a window that can be opened from the outside. The lock was broken. We've got the landlord saying that their dogs would have barked if she came walking by, but almost certainly she had to have gone walking by there. We've got the scent dogs not able to pick her up in the house, but picking her up at the fence outside. There was a lot. And then, of course, her father's comments about when they do find her, her feet are not injured, and she's supposedly walking around in the Malaysian jungle for days on end. So I really saw both sides. I really wasn't sure which way this was going to go, but unfortunately, this is where we've landed. After hearing all the relevant evidence, I rule that there was no one involved in the death of Nora Ann. Maimuna told a court in the city of Seremban. It is more probable than not that she died by misadventure. And Maimuna Aid is the coroner. Maimuna said there was no suspicious circumstances prior to the disappearance, no ransom request, no signs of intrusion into the family chalet. One little interesting point there, they did note that there was some fingerprints. They did notice, of course, there would be fingerprints of employees, but if I recall correctly, there was a couple of prints they couldn't quite identify. The teenager probably left the family accommodation on her own and subsequently got lost in the abandoned palm oil plantation, she said. For me to speculate and presume of her actions and involvement of a third party without any proof, that would be a breach of my duty. So the inquiry is hereby closed. Nora's parents said in a statement, once again, we see that justice struggles to support the most vulnerable in society, only engaging with special needs at a surface level, and not at the level that truly reflects children like Nora. I am a little bit surprised that they have made such a strong conclusion. Of course, I know that's what this inquest process is about. It's really about them making as good of a decision as they can with the information that they have. And I do hear what the coroner's saying. I understand that. But I almost feel like this is a case where you never know what further investigation could have found. I mean, of course, the family has always been pretty critical of the fact that it seems like the investigation, they went looking for her as a missing kid that just went wandering off on her own. And there was a number of days before any serious thought into a criminal investigation began. So there was a gap of time there, and the family's worried that evidence could have been removed or just naturally degraded in that amount of time. I don't know how practical it is. I think it's possible, though. And that's one of the things where I still get stuck with kind of hitting this, nope, we're certain that no one else had anything to do with this, case closed, and that's that. I almost wish that there was a different kind of outcome that they could reach with this, where they would say, we don't have anything to support that there was a third party that was part of this. So until we have something like that, we're going to stop investigating this, or something along those lines. And even then, what does this family do to push it forward? I mean, is it up to them to hire some type of private investigator in Malaysia to start working this case, to try to find that information? It's just really tough, really, really big stopping block for them. And honestly, I don't know where they go from here. So we've got another case we're looking at today. Some similar themes, because it's one of those situations where we kind of don't know what happened. But in this case, we've got a lot of additional information. Certainly seems strange, and it might be that someone's actually responsible. I want to give a big thank you to BrainScratcher Carissa Lacosta, who shot me a tweet. Tommy Jodry died very suspiciously in San Luis Obispo, California, and his family is fighting for justice. #BrainScratch. So I started looking into this case. I did make contact with his father. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to really get any questions answered from him, but we are in contact. I've got a phone call lined up with him. So I'm going to do this episode based on the media coverage that we have. I'm going to speak to his father. If we have significant further information, we'll do either, I don't know if it'll be enough for a separate episode or just an update on the next episode of BrainScratch, but that's kind of how we're going to roll for today. San Luis Obispo, California, also known as SLO, is located in San Luis Obispo County, approximately 190 miles north of Los Angeles and 230 miles south of San Francisco. California is it's a massive state, and it's got, everything. You've got snowy mountains to the beach with palm trees, culturally, just all kinds of different people. So this is kind of interesting because San Luis Obispo is in the Central Coast region, which is really almost smack dab in the middle. Like if you're driving from Los Angeles to San Francisco and you wanted to stop at a halfway point, more than likely you're going to stop in San Luis Obispo. And there is a bit of a college community for Cal Poly San Luis Obispo that is part of this town's makeup. But there's also some coastal communities. It's not too far from areas like Morro Bay and Cambria. So it's wine country. There's a lot of cross section in this area. The population of the city was over 45,000 at the 2010 census. And the person we're talking about today is Thomas R. Jodry. And just in terms of talking about California and what a mix of cultures it is, look at this picture. Thomas is wearing a cowboy hat, dressed up, pretty much in country wear, standing on top of a skateboard ramp. It's just a perfect description of this area in California in particular. Unfortunately, Thomas's life has ended, and that's what we're getting into today. He was born December 31st, New Year's Eve, 1997, and on September 14th, 2019, a terrible, terrible tragedy would take him away from his family. What's going on with this case? We're going to start at justiceforthomas.com. Essentially, a website has been put together that includes a lot of information from the family. We're going to hit the news stories, but I'm going to incorporate some of the info from his father in particular. His father has written a piece where he's included information from the police reports, the coroner's report, and of course, his own information that's been combined in that. He did a pretty good job at saying what's what. So we're going to get into some of that because from what I can see, the police reports, even though the family seems to have access to them, I'm seeing publications that are saying they've been requesting them and they can't get them. Same for the coroner's report. So one of the initial questions I did ask his father was about toxicology. You're going to see there's some strange potential for like maybe something could have been slipped to him, something along those lines as we're getting into the details here. But first, let's learn a little bit about Thomas Robert Jodry, or Tommy, as he was known. He was born with big brown eyes framed by long, curled eyelashes and a head full of dark brown hair. We admired our New Year's Eve baby and loved him as all parents love their children. Like any other boy, he loved playing with his cars and trucks, and especially loved his Toy Story Woody doll, and often dressed up as a cowboy. Tommy sailed through elementary and junior high school with excellent grades. He enjoyed art at an early age, and all kinds of different art from what I can see. He's into sketching, he's into music, just a very multi-talented young man. Sports always played an important role in Tommy's life. Many weekends were spent at soccer games. Over time, his interests changed to baseball, and by high school, he was playing on the golf team. But Tommy's favorite sport had always been skateboarding. He even won the local Monster Skate Series competition at the Atascadero Skate Park. Now, Atascadero, where Tommy and his family lived, is, I think, about 15, 16 miles kind of north, maybe just a hair northeast of San Luis Obispo. In addition to this, Tommy took guitar lessons for many years. High school did not go well for him. He was bullied there. It started in the 9th grade. By the 10th grade, he was struggling with his self-esteem. He carried this burden for many years and was finally retaking control of his life with the help of a local therapist. Tommy was making plans for his future. He had developed new friendships with a few young men who were truly kind to him. He was working on expanding his cactus sale business, which he had been nurturing since age 12. Basically, he did at close to the end of his life, he was really focused on online cactus sales. He had a skateboarding accident. It had really badly injured one of his arms. So he really focused in on selling cactus and succulents online. His focus was on water-wise landscaping. He had recently purchased a 2001 Chevy pickup to expand his sales at local flea markets. Tommy was 21 and working hard. On September 14th, 2019, he ventured out with an acquaintance. Tommy died that night. And that's the big mystery. Unfortunately, this is the headstone of Thomas Robert Jodry. And you can see they did just a really beautiful job in terms of displaying his loves. We've got the skateboarder, the art palette, the guitar. Thank you for the music and art. All right, so let's start at calcoastnews.com to get into the details. This article is from October 29th, 2019, so we're talking a little over a month after, and there's already been an interesting kind of shift in this investigation. Initially, police concluded that the death was a suicide, but after Bill and Mary Jane Jodry raised questions about how their son got as drunk as he was, and why a man who promised to make Tommy Jodry a famous artist bought drink after drink for him. The morning of September 14th, Tommy Jodry told his parents, Bill and Mary Jane, that he was going to an art show at Cal Poly with a man who he said was connected to the local art scene. There was no art show at Cal Poly that day. Now, there's some information that's come out since that. There is a particular, I don't know if I'd really consider it an art installation, but almost like a student project that they were going to see. So I'm not sure that the point about there being no art show was, at this time, they probably didn't understand the comments very well, but there's information that comes out later that kind of firms that up. At about 10 p.m., the man, whose name the Jodrys still have not found out, once again, as of the time of the writing of this, arrived at their home. He had Tommy Jodry's cell phone. He claimed he picked up the phone after their son had dropped it sometime while the two were out. The man said their son had been in an accident and had been seriously injured. He said they were at the Frog and Peach, Bill Jodry said. He said Tommy got upset and left the bar, walking and falling. He followed Tommy. Bill and Mary Jane Jodry said they asked the man why he took their son to a bar, but that they did not get a clear answer. Mary Jane Jodry confronted the man. He tells us that Tommy got very drunk, and I said, "You shouldn't have done that. Tommy doesn't drink well," Mary Jane Jodry said. And he said, "I didn't know that." The man told the Jodrys that he was at the Marsh Street garage where he saw Tommy Jodry lying on the ground, surrounded by police officers and first responders. Bill Jodry called the hospital and learned his son was dead. The man began rocking back and forth and saying, "How could Thomas have done this to me?" Think about this. The guy's sitting in the home of the parents, essentially tells the parents, "Hey, you need to call the hospital." There's some other information that comes out from the father that when he does call or go to call the hospital, he's left in a room with Tommy's mother, and essentially he's like telling her be quiet so he could hear what's going on with the phone call to the hospital. Just some very strange things. But then this comment, "How could Thomas have done this to me?" "My husband said you need to leave." Her husband told the man to get out, and he left in a panic, Mary Jane Jodry said. A few weeks later, Deputy Coroner Rory Lynn would say that Tommy Jodry's blood alcohol was 0.38. Extremely, extremely high. Miguel Lozano, the detective assigned to the case, said there was no witnesses or video showing what happened at the top of the garage. So essentially, Tommy's body is found near the bottom of this parking garage. I believe there's 3 interior levels, and then I think there might be a 4th level that you could park on that is actually the roof. Lozano said the man only bought 3 drinks, but the bar bill was over $100. So the guy tells the cops, "Yeah, I know, I only bought 3 drinks," but when they actually look in the details, it looks like it was considerably more. "This man bought all the drinks for him," Bill Jodry said. After the Jodrys contacted the coroner's office, Lynn left another phone message. He said he was reevaluating the cause of death. Shortly afterwards, the police department also reopened its investigation. So there's a dramatic shift that happens here, because essentially you have the coroner do their review. It seems like everyone's pointing towards suicide. Then something changes, and now it's been set to undetermined. By doing that, it seems like it's kind of re-kicked the investigation back open. Tommy Jodry dreamed of selling his photography and stencil art. The man who was with Tommy Jodry that night would make appointments to look over Jodry's wide variety of native plants. The man said he could make him a famous artist, Bill and Mary Jane Jodry said. Continuing at sanluisobispo.com, "It's a heartbreaking situation. A young man is dead after falling from the top of downtown San Luis Obispo parking structure, and his parents are struggling to find out exactly what happened." And that's where you get to one of the hardest aspects of this case. We've got a young man essentially found on the ground after the fall, and we don't really know what happened at that time. We know a bit of what happens in the bar. I've seen some photos. There seems to be cameras in the bar. But then after he leaves, there's just this gap of information. I'm kind of curious about it because I've looked around this downtown. I've actually been to this downtown area before. I'm very surprised that there isn't some cameras around to catch what's going on these streets. Like I said, it's a little bit of a college community. You've probably got some kids that might be drinking a little too much here or there. Very surprised that we're not seeing a trail of, hey, we caught Tommy on this camera and then he went down the street. Then we picked him up on this camera. We could see he was being followed. We could see he was in a fight. We could see he was alone. Just some information that'll help this family understand what's really going on with this case. And yes, there is this question about alcohol. Even if he was overserved, I mean, being overserved, typically you're talking about the establishment. It's really, the bartender is somewhat responsible for watching what's going on there. And if he sees that someone's having a little too much, he should be kind of pulling back on that. But outside of that, is there any legality in terms of this person that Tommy's with, buying all these drinks for him and giving them to him? We're going to look into that a little bit as we go through this today too. But talking about him being found at the bottom of a parking structure, of course, my brain just goes right to cameras. Unfortunately, there was no cameras installed in that parking structure. Here at sanluisobispo.com, they continue, if ever there was a case to be made for installing surveillance cameras inside downtown SLO's large parking structures, this is it. And while video surveillance may not have prevented what happened to Jodry at the Marsh Street garage, it could have given police and Jodry's family and friends some definitive answers. There is something that kind of runs through my brain when I think about the liability around this, with a parking garage in particular. So many times when I park in a garage, I'll see signs about them not being responsible, or if you pull the ticket, it'll be very clear they're not responsible for break-ins or damage that happens to your cars or anything like that. I'm almost wondering if it's a choice that they're making to not have cameras specifically because it's kind of omitting some of their liability on that front. I don't know. I don't know if there is anything to that. But it's just something that I kind of can't shake from my mind. Is that open them up to, hey, you've got footage of a crime being committed because someone broke into my car, and now you have to serve that to the police. And does it put them on the hook for that type of information or even damages resulting from that? I don't know. But for a case like this, of course, I want cameras there to help police, but also to help the family. The city of San Luis Obispo currently has no cameras in any of its garages. Once again, it's leading me to believe that this is by design for some reason. Though they are being installed at the new pay-on-foot machines inside the structures. Once again, in terms of security, that's a little different because you're talking about the machine actually being secured. It's a machine that might receive money, take credit cards and things like that. So it could be that people would want to steal that machine or try to break into that machine. So I don't see that those cameras are particularly helpful, at least in the context of what we're talking about here. So who is the man? What is the story? We're going to bounce back to justiceforthomas.com and look at a write-up by his father. And I really so appreciate how they're representing Tommy's loves. You can see here we've got a bunch of cactus and succulent plants. I saw that they also did a charity event where they sold several of his plants as well. It really warms my heart to see someone's life honored in such a way. So this information put together by his father, but it is a narrative based on the following sources: his personal observations, and he was actually there when Tommy got picked up, so he's got some firsthand observations there. The official police reports, like I mentioned before, and then the coroner's report. So this is from his own observation. At approximately 2 p.m., a middle-aged man pulled up in an automobile near our driveway. I walked towards his car and asked if I could help him. The driver said to me, "I'm looking for Thomas." I later learned that his name was David Allen Knight. I went to Tommy's room and told him. Tommy then reminded me that Knight was the man he'd told me about earlier that week, saying he's a photographer and is going to help me get published with my art, and we're going to look at art. So it seems like that is the intent of their day. They're getting together with plans to go. We heard in the previous article that it was some art show at Cal Poly, not necessarily an art show, but kind of an installation there. Tommy had a brace on his right arm from a recent elbow surgery stemming from a skateboard accident. He was still healing and had only recently been told that he could start lifting up to 10 pounds with his recovering arm. Thomas looked very bright and happy. Things were starting to fall into place for him. His elbow injury had kept him out of work for more than a year, and the cactus sales provided him with a little spending money and people to talk to. He was unable to drive a car or ride a bike while he was recovering from surgery. So, first of all, I just want to touch on the fact that I am getting a tone here that Thomas had some emotional problems. I mean, the first article was fairly clear about that. His family saying he struggled in high school. There seems to be, based on some of the comments that his mother made to Knight when Knight was in their home, just with how angry she was about Knight taking Tommy to a bar, seems to be that there might have been some possible substance abuse in the past with Tommy as well. But now we're talking about the fact that this poor guy's been out of work for a year. His arm obviously very badly injured if he's now just getting to the point where he can lift 10 pounds, can't ride a bike, can't drive himself somewhere. His self-esteem is probably taken a pretty good shot. But I think that's why the family is being so vocal about the fact that they knew that there was challenges going on. They knew that he needed help. He was getting help, and he was starting to look forward to the future. And, I've seen his Facebook page. He was very, very active on that page, in particular with this business. I mean, you could tell he really believed in this business. And even to this point, it's one thing when you're running your own business and then you find these different mechanisms that enrich your life. Now he's got someone that could potentially help him in other artistic endeavors. If nothing else, this guy's willing to give him a ride to an installation that he wants to see. It's one of those things. I know the police ruled suicide. We have to keep that as a consideration here because of how he's found. Is there some reason why he left the bar? He went to the parking garage, he went up to the top and maybe jumped of his own accord for some reason. I think we have to stay open to that, but there's a lot more to get through. So let's continue. Tommy and Knight got into Knight's car and left. So now he's shifting into narrative that has been distilled from the police and coroner's reports. So the plan supposedly was supposed to go look at art. Knight drove them to Cal Poly, but they discovered that they had arrived during Cal Poly week of welcome. So basically it's a time where new incoming students are coming in and their families are coming in and helping them move in. The campus was packed, traffic in a gridlock. They left and Knight took Thomas to grab lunch and visit Montaña de Oro. And I wasn't sure what that was. But it is an area, I think it's a little south of Morro Bay, if I recall correctly, just kind of a scenic area. And there's something about this part of the trip that just raises a question for me. And I've actually asked his father, I don't have a response to this yet. Are they going here with the intent of doing some photography? Like, I'm just wondering why this location, because this isn't particularly close to his house. I guess it's not too far from the campus. So maybe because they wanted to go see something around the campus that was kind of artistic, they couldn't get to that. Maybe this was a backup plan. Hey, we could go here. We could take some photos of this area instead. I'm not sure. But keep in mind, this is a long day that's going on. Like, he's picked up at 2 and he's found sometime around 9 p.m. On the street. Anyway, they spent a few hours at Montaña de Oro. At about 7 p.m., Tommy sent a friend of his a text message saying, I'll be home soon, and we are finally going to look at art. Thomas and Knight went to Kreuzberg Coffee. Tommy saw that there was a comedy show in progress, but they did not attend the show because Knight did not want to pay the cover charge. They left and went to the Frog and Peach bar. According to employees, Tommy and Knight arrived at the Frog and Peach approximately 8 p.m. Now, there's a gap of time even in this retelling here. Other things that I'm seeing are saying that they went somewhere else, that they had lunch somewhere. I'm not even really seeing that in this part of the timeline. But keep in mind, they leave his house at 2. It's maybe, I would guess, a half-hour drive. I don't know how long they were stuck in the gridlock around Cal Poly, but then they leave there. There's still just there's a lot of time in here that I'm having a little trouble understanding. At 8:05 p.m., Knight texted the words F you to Thomas's phone. Knight later explained that he sent the message to verify that Tommy was receiving his text messages. I've heard a different explanation that I don't know if it came from Knight or I don't know if it was written by someone and they kind of misunderstood what was being written here, but it said that Knight sent that to make sure that Tommy had his phone number. I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense because it seems like him and Knight were in contact prior to this. I believe they actually met when Tommy sold him a cactus previously. When he pulled up at 2 o'clock, Tommy's father also describes that it looks like Knight is going for his phone. So it looks like Knight had Tommy's number, was going to call him or maybe message him from the phone. I don't know, but very strange at 8:05, all of a sudden there's a text saying F you to Tommy, especially considering that I think at this time they're sitting right next to each other at the bar. So maybe it is as simple as just doing a check on his text messages. According to Knight, Tommy didn't look at his phone and did not otherwise acknowledge the text message. Knight opened a tab for him and Tommy at the Frog and Peach. In the hour that they were at the bar, Tommy had many drinks, including one of Knight's drinks, which was switched in front of him. Another thing I want to ask the father about, and that's my primary reason for wanting to understand the toxicology a bit more too. I know we've got the blood alcohol content. I'm just wondering, is there something else that's going on here? Because we're talking about a drink being switched. The drinks were paid for by Knight on his credit card. At about 8:55, they left the Frog and Peach. So I've seen different numbers in terms of how many drinks. I've seen it as high as 9. I've seen it between 5 and 6. And I believe we're talking about whiskey. We're talking about a lot of alcohol consumed in a very, very short period of time. The bill was well over $100, and Knight was observed not drinking his own drinks. Just outside the bar, Thomas tripped and face planted on the sidewalk. His face was bleeding and he was extremely disoriented. Tommy became irritated and or embarrassed, and he ran from Knight. Tommy struggled to walk roughly a block eastbound to the short pedestrian walkway located between the Gap and the Downtown Center cinemas. Near the Gap, Tommy fell down again and dropped his phone. Knight picked up Thomas's phone and took it with him. According to his statement to the police, Knight did not see Thomas after this. According to witnesses, Thomas was running from Knight and said, "Help, someone is after me." We've got all kinds of trouble that's going on with this, but let me just pull up a map real quick so we can get a sense of what's going on. Frog and Peach Pub located here. Location where Tommy is found is here at the corner of Marsh and Choro. And I believe I couldn't find the Gap that he was talking about, but the theater he's talking about, I think, is in this area here. So the little walking path that he's talking about, I think, is this line that's right in the middle of this area. It almost looks like an open air mall if you're walking by and just look to the right there. We're talking about Tommy being so intoxicated, he's having trouble walking, right? I mean, he literally falls when he gets out of the bar. Supposedly he falls again later, but for some reason, Thomas isn't able to keep up with him. There's a little bit of a logic thing in there that I'm not quite understanding. And how far behind is Thomas if he's able to see where the cell phone drops and he's able to recover the cell phone? That whole part of the story, I really wish, especially because they're around businesses now, no one got any footage. Like, all it would take is just a little clip of footage to see Tommy moving down the street to know what's going on. Is he running? Is someone behind him? Is someone not behind him? All those questions that I said early on in the video, all it would take is literally a few seconds of footage to open up a whole level of understanding to this case. As it is with these details that were being given, admittedly, these are coming from his father's write-up, there's a lot of strangeness to this. Now, thankfully, we are going to have some input from Knight at one point too. And unfortunately for me, it doesn't help with the strangeness. It actually amplifies it quite a bit, but let's continue. So while the officer was attending to Tommy, so essentially someone called 911 and said someone had fallen, or that I believe they actually said they suspected that it was a suicide. So 911 goes to respond. While the officer is attending to Tommy, an unknown male, later identified as Knight, approached him and asked what happened. The officers asked Knight to stop. Knight told the officers, "I know him, that's Tommy, but I don't want to be on record that I know him." I mean, just start the list, guys, of all the strange things that are going on with this. Knight told the officer Tommy's name and the name of the city he lived in, but Knight refused to identify himself to the officer or provide any further information, even though he had Thomas's cell phone in his pocket. Tommy was transported by ambulance to Sierra Vista Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 9:49. The other thing I'm wondering about with this case is, was Knight's car actually parked in that particular parking lot? There's a lot of different parking lots around this area. I'm just kind of wondering what is pulling Tommy to that location. Was he there earlier because that's where the car was? If so, and he's really running away from Knight in particular, why is he going to run towards Knight's car? Doesn't really make any sense. He's running by businesses. If you've got someone really chasing you, are you going to pass all those opportunities for help? I don't know. There's just a lot of aspects of this I'm having trouble understanding. And here is a picture, it looks like, from body cam footage. This is David A. Knight, 56 years old. And this is a picture from the scene of the police responding to where they found Tommy. Let's jump to a map real quick so I can show you what the area looks like. So this is, I don't know if, basically that picture we just looked at, those cars were right about here. There's a memorial to Tommy that is taking up this space here. I don't know if that's literally where he was found. I would assume it's got to be close to that. So if we look up from here, you can see there's businesses on the first level, second level parking, third level parking, and then a fourth level rooftop. If he is found here, there's some things that are a little troubling for me with that, in particular because of this structure here, which it looks like, I don't know if it's a staircase in there, it might be. But looking from the satellite view down, you don't get up on top of this. And this is kind of raised from where that top level of parking is. So for Tommy to have wound up there, I don't know. I don't know where he went from. I don't think it was from the top of this. It might have been from in here somewhere. One of the reports that I've heard says it's the third level. And when I look at this, I consider the businesses on the first level. Obviously, you've got a window here for the second level, and then you've got a window here. This, to me, would be the third level, despite the fact that there, I believe, is rooftop parking above that. So if that information is accurate and it really was the third level, it would be through this kind of, it doesn't look like it's glass. It's just kind of framed steel in there. Yeah, and you can see on the other side they've got the steel thread or ropes to stop cars from kind of pushing through if they park too close to the edge there. It's strange to me if he would have jumped out of that window in particular in a motion going in this direction. I'm just wondering what motivated that. What was that about? It's almost as if he would have jumped straight down. I don't know if these are fabric. I don't know if they're hard, but this awning would have kind of stopped his fall quite a bit. So I don't know. So the laws vary a little bit, but the way I'm looking at this case, we have to break it down to, it feels like three possibilities. One, he did this on his own. And there's two kind of sub possibilities in that. Either it was an accident or for some reason he did this on purpose to himself. Outside of that, there's the possibility that someone did this to him. I think really understanding where the car was the car parked there, and where Knight was at that time is crucial to figuring that out. Is it that Tommy was trying to get away? Knight chased him all the way back to the car. There was some kind of scuffle there. That I'm a little concerned about as well. And you're going to see it's partly related to Knight's own statement that makes me concerned about that. But if we are talking about the first set of conditions, did alcohol play a factor? And if so, is Knight somewhat, or could he be held somewhat responsible for this? So California seems to have some laws that essentially try to limit the liability for someone kind of over-serving. California lawmakers have essentially absolved bars, restaurants, party hosts, and most others of potential liability for selling or furnishing alcohol to customers and guests in most, but not all situations. They then go to detail the exceptions. The exceptions are really if you're underage. And of course, we don't really have that happening in this situation. However, Criminal liability, little bit of a different thing here for California. California makes it a misdemeanor offense for any person to sell, give away, or otherwise provide an alcoholic beverage to specifically any habitual or common drunkard. I'm so surprised they're using that terminology. But basically anyone known to have a drinking problem, or to any obviously intoxicated person. Now, where does that fit in when we're talking about Tommy? In one of his obituaries, I did see some reference to this. His high school years did not go well. Depression and anxiety took its toll. He was set to sign himself into an alcohol rehabilitation program, but circumstances led him into the wrong situation that ultimately led to the loss of his life. So Tommy does actually fit the first condition, but how could Knight have known that, I think, is a fair question. However, the second condition, to any obviously intoxicated person, Knight was there the whole time. Knight ordered every drink for him. Knight knows how long they were sitting there, and he knows that this is a young man that's just turned 21, probably doesn't know his limits so well when it comes to this. On top of that, we've got the information from Tommy's father about potentially Knight even giving him more alcohol than he's aware of in terms of that drink switch that might have happened. On top of all that, then we have, once Tommy starts running, he's falling at the door, he's falling down the street. I think it's pretty obvious that he's intoxicated. The question is, how far back does that go? And can you really hold Knight responsible with the information just on hand, knowing how many drinks he bought for him while they were sitting there? I think it would be obvious to you that that person was either currently intoxicated or was going to be seriously intoxicated. And would Knight have some precedence for this? Maybe in his criminal past, some reason for getting people drunk? Stay tuned. So despite the fact that it seems like civil charges around this thing don't really seem all that strong or maybe even possible, here at Paso Robles Daily News, we see an article from June 29th, 2020. Family of man who died in fall from parking garage files complaint, continues to seek information. William and Mary Jane Jodry filed a civil complaint on May 14th against David Allen Knight, 57, alleging that Knight intentionally and proximately caused the death of Thomas Robert Jodry. A civil complaint only represents one side of the lawsuit. I have seen in other cases where families will file lawsuits like this. It's not really about winning the lawsuit. It's actually about starting the discovery process and getting that person to sit down and answer some questions. So I really don't know if we're going to see this lawsuit go full blown and them come to some type of settlement from him or something like that. I think that they're getting what they wanted already, which is information. And we're going to hit on some of that here soon. But according to court documents, the Jodry family is asking for damages in excess of $25,000 for funeral and burial expenses, loss of financial support, and loss of love and companionship. Here at SanLuisObispo.com, we get some information from Knight's perspective. Knight calls death heartbreaking, claims harassment. Court records show that Knight had previously requested a restraining order against the Jodrys in December, which a Superior Court judge denied. I believe he's actually filed two. I think they've both been denied. In a sworn declaration attached to his restraining order request, Knight wrote that he is a full-time caregiver to his 83-year-old mother, with whom he lives. He says that beginning in November, William Jodry has engaged in a continuous course of harassing conduct. Mr. Jodry continues to believe incorrectly that I bear responsibility for the tragic death of his son, Knight wrote. According to Knight's side of the story, he and Thomas Jodry planned to visit the architectural boneyard at Cal Poly, but instead ended up at the bar. I hadn't heard of this before. It's a deserted hodgepodge of experimental structures designed by nearby university students. And here are a couple of photos of it. So it's, for taking photographs, maybe even for making an independent film or something like that. Certainly some interesting structures out here. This is reportedly what they were supposed to go see for the art. So now these are Knight's words. After we left the bar, Thomas became very erratic, made disparaging comment towards a couple walking towards us on the street, and got into a fight with an unknown male, he wrote. That's something else. I'd really be curious to know if that showed up in the police report. Did they ever track down this male? This family has been looking for information. They're putting posters up in the area. They're doing vigils in the area. Has anyone stepped forward to actually support this information? I'm really curious about that, because one of the things that I think we have to consider in this is, did Knight get into a fight with Tommy? And is Knight putting this information out there because he's trying to justify what he's worried the coroner might have found in terms of damage that happened to Tommy outside of the fall? Knight continues, I intervened verbally and attempted to de-escalate the altercation. The unknown male punched Thomas in the face or head, causing Thomas to fall to the ground. So very, very different story even than we're getting from what the father is getting from the police report information. And I think that police report information is probably likely coming from Knight. So are we seeing a change in his version of the story here? Because Thomas supposedly ran out of the bar, fell down, ran further down the street, fell down again. Now we're hearing about this couple and a direct altercation with someone else. Certainly a leg of investigation that I hope they followed up on. After the altercation, Knight wrote, Jodry got up and crossed the street, yelling profanities at two young women before falling again. Knight wrote that Jodry dropped his cell phone and he picked it up for him while checking to see if he was okay. Knight says Jodry suddenly stood up and ran off with his arms flapping around. He was yelling at people as he ran. This happened too fast for me to return his phone, Knight wrote. I tried to run after him, but he was a considerably faster runner and I could not keep up. Once again, I'm just calling back to, how drunk is he? We're saying that he's falling down. It's interesting because here he's saying the first time he fell, essentially he gets punched in the face and that causes him to fall. But then later we're saying, yeah, he's yelling at girls and then he falls again. Well, falls again, what, on his own? So he's too drunk to walk properly, but all of a sudden he goes taking off on foot with his arms flapping around, despite the fact that one of them supposedly in a brace at this point. I don't know. And then he keeps yelling at people as he runs, and we don't have more witnesses talking about seeing this and helping this family get some better understanding. He said he searched the streets before coming upon emergency vehicle lights near the Marsh Street parking structure, and he saw someone lying on the sidewalk. At this time, I thought Thomas might have been hit by a car. I told the police officer that I thought the person lying on the sidewalk was Thomas Jodry, Knight wrote. I asked if he was breathing, and the officer said yes, and he told me to move back. I went back to my car to follow the ambulance so that I would know which hospital they took him to. The ambulance was gone by the time I returned, so I drove to Sierra Vista Hospital and saw an ambulance and police cars parked outside. I don't know where his car was parked. It sounds to me like it couldn't have been at that spot, because how did he miss the ambulance taking off? Unless maybe it was up several levels. He had to walk upstairs. It took him a few minutes to get up there and then drive down the levels. I don't know. It's still a question mark in my mind. He said that he then returned Jodry's cell phone to his parents. This was heartbreaking, and I continue to have sympathy for his parents, he wrote. He says that he was interviewed twice by an unnamed police detective without a lawyer present, and that the detective told him he was not a suspect in the death and that the investigation would be closed without any referral to the DA's office for criminal prosecution. Knight wrote that the Jodrys have shown up at his house on 2 occasions and called him a murderer and a predator, demanding that he pay for Thomas Jodry's funeral. I feel terribly bad for the Jodrys that their son died, but I tried to help Thomas that night and did not cause his death, Knight wrote. I did not witness how he died. In September, of course, coming up on 1 year of this occurrence, the family decides they're going to hold a vigil at the parking structure. And they do so with such care and respect for COVID, for what we're all facing in 2020 at the time that this is going on. On Saturday, September 12th and Sunday, September 13th, the community will be gathering at the corner of the Marsh Street parking garage. Community members will stand in vigil in honor of the anniversary of Atascadero man Tommy Jodry. They will be holding signs calling for justice and positively interacting with people on the street. Because of social distancing, this will be a touch-free interaction with the public. There will be several poster boards with a QR code that people on the street can scan. Extremely smart, extremely caring. Rather than have a large group of people, they're doing a micro demonstration where we ask that people sign up for a shift to stand up in a socially distant spacing on the sidewalk. Continuing with another article, and I just want to say thank you to sanluisobispo.com for really digging into this and being so supportive of the family's efforts and finding the truth here. Man accused of causing fatal SLO parking garage fall hid molestation conviction, records say. A 57-year-old man accused by an Atascadero family of plying their 21-year-old son with alcohol before the young man's fatal fall from a downtown San Luis Obispo parking garage has a criminal history that includes sexually molesting a teen. Since expunged court records obtained by the Tribune show that David Allen Knight of Atascadero has a felony court conviction from 2003 for molesting a child under 14 after a witness told authorities Knight provided alcohol to the minor during a camping trip. In a wrongful death lawsuit, Knight repeatedly denied that he had any criminal convictions, according to a transcript of his testimony during a deposition taken under oath in September. And I'm seeing this isn't the only charge. There's several other charges very similar in nature. Seems like alcohol is part of an MO for those charges in particular. And if it wasn't for that, I don't know that I'd even bring this up because, talking about a 21-year-old falling or being pushed or whatever happened at the parking garage is quite a bit different than these types of charges. But we do have that condition about the alcohol. And here is a screenshot from that security camera in the bar. We can see them sitting together there. Knight denies having anything to do with Jodry's death and accuses the Jodry family of harassing him. San Luis Obispo Superior Court judges have denied 2 separate requests by Knight for restraining orders against the family. Bill and Mary Jane Jodry accused the San Luis Obispo Police Department of conducting a shoddy investigation into their son's death. Knight's behavior and the circumstances have led the young man's parents to seek information about Knight, 36 years their son's senior. Justice for Thomas, a community group not directly affiliated with the Jodry family, is also seeking witnesses and information about the case. And as of when I'm filming this, there's a few particular questions that both of those parties are looking for. The first one is here. This is a post actually from his father, William Jodry. We've got another screenshot of them sitting at the bar. Tommy is not happy after David A. Knight of Atascadero pulled Tommy's head down by the bill of his hat. These other guys noticed the change in conversation and were watching them. And essentially they're asking for these other guys to reach out to them. They want to speak to these people about what they might have seen there. What would the context have been for him to be pulling Tommy's head down using the bill of his hat? I don't know. I'm just concerned about it because of the charges that we just talked about that are in his past as well. Could it be that that was the catalyst for the fight? Did he think that he was going to get enough alcohol into Tommy and that they were going to be able to have some type of romantic encounter? I don't know. But there's something else about this that I just got to put out there. I was pointing out earlier how long this time frame is. When you look at this day, this doesn't seem to me like it's just a couple guys, hey, let's go check out this art installation. There's aspects of this when I first started looking at it, I was like, is someone on a date? Like, we're going to the beach. We're going to this kind of lookout point at the beach. Don't get me wrong, I totally get that could have been a pure photography trip. But then we're talking about, and now we're going to go have lunch. Hey, we're going to go have coffee. Oh, there's a comedy show. Nah, we don't want to go. Let's go to the bar. Okay, we're going to the bar. This is just what's going on in this day. And it could be that that's not from Tommy's perspective. He might be stuck at this point because he doesn't have a ride. He has no way to get out of this. He's got his phone. I suppose he could have called his family or maybe called his friends. We do have that text message from him where he's kind of saying, hey, we're finally going to go get to look at some art. So it seems like Tommy's kind of on the hook for what he wants to get out of this day, going to look at art and maybe getting some help from this guy in terms of his career. But from Knight's perspective, is this something else? Is it just, there's elements of this where I couldn't shake that feeling of like, are they on a date? Like, I don't get the movements that are happening around all this. So while William has this post over at Justice for Tommy Facebook group, and of course I'll have links to all this in the description box down below, the latest thing they are looking for is a little bit different. The Jodry family is looking to connect with a 911 caller from the evening that Tommy died. Basically, they're looking for the person that called it in. The caller was male with the last name of Reyes and was very genuine and kind. Unfortunately, 911 dispatch did not take down the caller's contact number. I'm curious about that because I don't know. Some of the systems now, I don't think they'd even need to ask the number. I think they're showing up on their screens, so that might be why they didn't ask for it. I don't know if the people that are helping the family have heard the actual 911 call and they're like, hey, why wasn't that number given? It could be that police actually have that information, but I'm getting a very strong sense here that Justice for Thomas and the Jodry family are kind of conducting their own investigation around this as well. So this is another potential point where you guys can help. Please share this video in San Luis Obispo, in that area, Atascadero. You never know, because San Luis Obispo, like, some people travel there. Some people are there to visit friends that are in college and things like that. So it might be that Reyes isn't even a local to that particular area. So we really need to raise exposure on this case and try to help them track these few points down. There is a GoFundMe. It is being managed by the Justice for Thomas Jodry organization, but it's in collaboration with the family. You can see they were aiming for a $5,000 goal. They're already at over $6,600. We need the help of this community to raise funds in order for the Jodry family to offer a reward for information leading up to this mysterious death. As you can imagine, funeral fees, newspaper ads, and other means to spread the word about Tommy's mysterious death can add up to thousands of dollars. This family has humbly accepted our help to raise these funds. On behalf of myself and my amazing supporters through PayPal, Patreon, and people that buy merchandise, we're all making a donation to this today just as soon as I'm done recording here. There is currently a $10,000 reward for information leading to the solving of what happened in the parking structure that night. And I like that they're phrasing it that way. They're not saying, hey, we're looking for a conviction. They're saying they just want to understand what happened. So if you want to go for that reward, if you have information that can help, that is being run through the justiceforthomas.com page. Once again, I've got a link to it in the description box down below. And this is where we wind up with this case, Brain Scratchers. What is justice in this case? It's really boiling down to understanding what happened. Is this something that was a tragic accident? Is this for some reason something that Tommy made a decision in doing? Or is there more at play? I'm really conflicted because of the information about what happened in that time. And think about that time gap. I mean, the parking structure is not even... It's like a block and a half away from the bar. So the amount of time that you're talking about from Tommy deciding that he's running, that he hits the door and then gets to that parking structure, it could be a matter of a few minutes. And that few minutes really has the answers that this family is looking for. So, but I'm really kind of tore up in the information. The information about what Knight is saying happened is bothering me. There's a fight, there's an altercation, Tommy's getting punched. Where is that person? Where is the family talking about that person or reaching out for that person? I haven't seen any signs of that. It could be that it's happened. I don't know. I'll likely know more after I get in touch with William for myself. But I'm really just conflicted at the information. How does it fit together? Does it really make sense? I don't know. That's where I turn it over to you. Let's talk about it in the comments down below. And as always, I ask that we remain respectful. We've got a family very heartbroken here. And we've got a person's reputation on the line as well. Admittedly, I think some people are going to look at that criminal past and say, hey, we don't need to be protecting people like this. I get it. But it's really the search for truth that we're trying to do here. Is there some other way for this family to find it? If you've got some piece to that puzzle, first of all, if it's good enough for a tip, please let them know about it. If not, let's talk about it in the comments down below and see if it's something that might be helpful to them. Before I end today's video, I want to thank some people that help make donations like the one we're making today possible. Big thank you to new patron Lori Grant. Also want to give a thank you to Noreen, Emily, Christina, and Jacqueline for increasing their pledges over at Patreon. If you'd like to join or increase your pledge, you could do that through lordinarts.com. Sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, or buy merchandise. All of it helps keep us supported here at Lord and Arts. Helps keep us presenting these ad-free, I think, for today's episode, but always without ads in the middle of our presentations. We really appreciate your support in doing that. Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend. I'll see you back here on Monday with a brand new episode of Case Cracked on the Lord and Arts channel.